Hey everybody, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we are getting a behind-the-scenes look at exactly what it takes to put on Winterthur's marquee exhibit coming in September on African-American designer Ann Lowe. Get ready, the 302 is designing your way. Hey there, we are giving you a behind-the-scenes preview to a really big and beautiful exhibit coming to Winterthur this year. And of course, it's about American designer Ann Lowe, society's best kept secret. But as a preview, we're going to be checking out a smaller exhibit called Getting Dressed with Ann Lowe. I'm joined now by Kate Sawmell, who is the head of textile conservation, to talk a little bit about this. Kate, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So Ann Lowe was a 20th century designer. She was born in the late 19th century, and she came from a family of dressmakers. Both her mother and her grandmother were dressmakers. So she learned from that tradition. Her skills came out of that family tradition of dressmaking. She had a very long period of designing dresses from the 1920s all the way up through the 1960s. And a lot of her work is rooted in that Edwardian style. So she was very traditional in some ways, but she also really kept up with the times as well. She's most well known for designing Jacqueline Kennedy's, at the time, Jacqueline Bouvier's wedding dress. She did a lot of designing for debutantes and the Social Register of New York, and she also designed a dress for Olivia de Havilland's Oscar, for her Oscar performance, or her nomination. She actually was pretty well known at the time within certain circles. Of course, now a lot of people don't recognize her name, so we're hoping this exhibition will really bring her to more prominence and really give her due of what her amazing skills were in terms of a dressmaker.
Now, this is going to be Winterthur's marquee exhibit for the year, and you're really going to shine the light on why she was so important, especially at the time. Can you talk to me a little bit about, she was very picky with her clientele at a time where, African-American designers were not getting the accolades that they deserved?
Yeah, so she really didn't get the praise that she deserved at the time. I think because she was African American, even though she was very sought after. So I think she was taken advantage of in some cases, which is unfortunate. So we're trying to really show just how much amazing work that she did and bring her more to prominence, as she is with many circles who, of course, know her work. And she knew Dior, so we know she met Christian Dior in Paris, and he admired her work. So she was well connected in a lot of those couture circles. She was well respected. She really kept up with the fashion of the times while staying true to her own style. There's many really interesting and fun details that we have noticed in her dresses that are very consistent. She has very consistent shaping, body shaping, which of course would have come out of her Edwardian and Victorian mother and grandmother's dressmaking skills and training. And she does a lot with very what we consider feminine sort of details, a lot of lace and embellishments and flowers. They're very lush and very beautifully executed.
I was going to say that, in my research, I saw that there was a certain flower applique that was almost like a signature for her. That appears, does it appear on Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress or just in other designs?
So she actually does have several dresses where she has flowers or leaves. There's a story that evidently somebody thought that a flower was a real flower and tried to pull it off or cut it off the dress. So they're very realistic, really beautifully executed. The Jacqueline Kennedy dress has rosettes, which are not directly, they're not literal flowers, but they're evocative of a flower. They have these rondelle or rosettes that she makes out of bias cut tape. So again, very ornate, very complex construction.
So at the time of Jacqueline, at the time Bouvier's wedding to the future president of the United States, the designer of her dress was not well known. And someone said to her, "Oh, is that couture?" And she was like, "No, no." Now, why do you think that was? Why didn't Jackie Bouvier say, "Oh, it's Ann Lowe, and check it out"? I mean, why not?
Well, there's a lot of stories that, we've heard about why there was that happened and what the relationship was, whether it was Jacqueline at the time Bouvier's mother who had the relationship, or even one of the Kennedys who had the relationship with Ann Lowe. We know that the Auchincloss family did have debutante dresses that were designed by Ann Lowe. It's interesting in context seeing this very full traditional dress that Jacqueline wore to her wedding, which was sort of in contrast to her later more very simple, streamlined style, more elegant style that she was known for. So it is kind of interesting to think about how those choices were made, and whether maybe Jacqueline was being politic at the time, and so yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different stories that sort of swirl around that, and I'm not really sure we'll ever know exactly all that went into that process and that decision making.
I would imagine there's a lot of research for your team when putting this exhibit together. Now, this preview, Getting Dressed with Ann Lowe, has a lot of moving pieces, and we're going to talk a little bit about those when we return.
My name is Jessica Doran, and I'm with Pfeiffer Orchards, and I love the way things grow on the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about the preview exhibit, Getting Dressed with Ann Lowe, to a much bigger exhibit that's going to open on September 9th at Winterthur. I'm joined by Kate Saumel to talk a little bit about this. Now, we've already gone over a little bit of the history, and the big exhibit will really take a deep dive. But talk to me a little bit about, getting the mannequins together. I mean, it's a very big job when you consider how delicate some of these fabrics are.
So the exhibition will have 37 dresses designed and made by Ann Lowe, as well as 7 contemporary designers. So in total, we have over 40 pieces that need to be mounted. Many of the Ann Lowe pieces also needed some conservation treatment in order to be stable enough to go onto a mannequin. So the reason why we have such a long lead time is we have to think about how we're going to safely display them and make sure that they're going to be returned, because all of them are from lenders, not from Winterthur's collection. So how are we going to return them safely to our lenders, as well as make them look beautiful and really live up to Ann Lowe's vision? So the first step really is conservation work. After that, we think about what our mounting materials are going to be and how we're going to safely mount them. A lot of mannequins in museums that are available are made from paper mache, like a traditional dress form, or a lot of times people will use polyurethane foam, which is, as many of us know from our personal things, polyurethane foam does not have a long life. It tends to break down quickly. So in an effort to try to make the most stable and usable mannequins that we could, we teamed up with University of Delaware to actually design our own mannequins out of Ethifoam, which is a polyethylene foam. It's inert, and it has a lot of really good qualities because we can pin into it, we can carve it, we can shape it. So that's been a really it's been a big, complicated project, but really excellent to be able to do that and kind of part of the design process from the beginning.
Now you show exactly how pliable it is and how sturdy it is by carving it into cross sections, or an explosion, I guess is the technical term. But how do you? Because it seems like it wouldn't be hard. So how do you stick it on like metal frames, and how do you figure out the best way to do that will show off the gown well without compromising its structure?
So we started with the idea of a dress form. That was the aesthetic that the team really decided they wanted to go with. So we then went to Katja Rolsey, who is our collaborator, one of our collaborators at the University of Delaware, and asked her if she could help us make an avatar. And an avatar is basically from a CAD or CAD program. That actually models something in 3D, so that we can then take that program that she made and give it over to the UD Maker Gym engineers, and they use that to make a program and or a file, that they can put into their CNC router, and they designed it into slices so that they could have a CNC router actually cut them out, and then we assemble them. So it was a complex process from beginning to end. We were very lucky in a lot of ways that the original avatar that was made has actually worked really well. We tried to make some modifications that were successful. One of the challenges of this is that Ann Lowe, of course, designed over a very long period of time. She made dresses in the 1920s. She made dresses all the way through to the 1960s, and the body shaping and silhouettes are very different in the 1920s than they are in the 1960s. But we sort of came to the conclusion after trying to make some modifications that really just keeping it a basic form for the production part of it was the easiest, and then a lot of those modifications happen post-production after we have the mannequins here.
So we talked a little bit about getting the mannequins ready. You mentioned the conservation. Are we talking about cleaning and stitching and things like that? Can you go into a little more depth about what it is you guys are hard at work doing right now, getting these pieces ready to put on those mannequins?
So it really depends on the dress. Some of the dresses are in excellent condition and need very little, maybe just a surface cleaning or light vacuuming. And then we want to make sure that the forms are really supporting them, because it's really kind of a different thing to think about somebody wearing a dress for an evening versus having that dress on display for 3 months. So we really have to have that dress well supported over that entire length of the exhibition. So mounting is actually a big part of the conservation work, and figuring out how we can support weak areas even before we do conservation. And then several of the dresses needed pretty intensive conservation work. We have one dress that needed a lot of stitching stabilization. We have some others that needed some actual small adhesive. We very rarely use adhesive, but just to make sure it all stays together. Right. And then usually the final step is finishing with some humidification, just to try to ease out some of the wrinkles and make them really shine and look their best.
So while you're working on the perfect mannequin, working on the restoration, there's also a team that's building platforms and the whole design space. Can you talk to me about the vision for bringing everything together and how it has to be like an orchestrated dance, as it were? They're hard at work in there. We just took a peek.
They are, yeah. So we have a huge team that's involved in this project. This is another reason why it takes a long time to pull these exhibitions together. So there's a design team, and we worked closely with them, and also, again, our lenders, because many of the lenders have very specific stipulations about display and exposure. So we all work together to come up with a design that's really beautiful, but also going to be safe and for all the objects that are going to be on display.
Well, we're excited to see how this all comes together. Kate, thank you very much for joining us. Now, we talked about the mannequins, we talked about the restoration, and we talked a little bit about building the show space. But now we're going to talk about what it's going to actually take to get these dresses onto those mannequins and ready for you to see. We'll be right back.
Debbie Harper, the Curator of Education here at the George Read II House in Newcastle, and I love talking about history in miniature on the 302.
Welcome back. We are talking about getting dressed with Ann Lowe. I'm joined by Heather Hansen, who is a textile conservation assistant here at Winterthur, to talk a little bit about what it takes to get these very delicate dresses onto these specially formulated mannequins. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So it's kind of like piecemeal, and you're kind of like a seamstress yourself, because you just don't put the dress on the mannequin. It's like layered on Talk to me about the process.
So dresses are typically made to fit a body, but here we're fitting a body to a dress. Each dress that Ann Lowe made is custom made to a particular person. And so every single one is different, and we need to pad out and fully support those garments so they can be on display for a long period of time.
So whenever you have the mannequin and it's the perfect size, you start out with, I didn't realize this, but the undergarments. So tell me about that.
Right. So a lot of these dresses have very full skirts, and we need to support them fully. So we'll put a hoop skirt underneath it, or in some cases a tulle petticoat that really creates air underneath to keep it wide and flowing.
Full, and kind of get the feel for it. So you have the different layers, and I know that you have, as part of this exhibit, kind of like a cross section of a dress. Tell me about that.
Right. So we have in the exhibit showing the toile, or the pattern making process of the Jackie Kennedy wedding dress, and it shows the underpinnings underneath it, the petticoat that goes, and then also the tulle to give it fully support. We also require arms. A lot of these dresses have open necklines, and so in order to support them, we put in something that's called a Foss shape arm. Foss shape is a polyester. It's moldable, and we use heat to activate it, and it becomes stiff, but it's really, really lightweight, and it fully supports those arms.
So it's just kind of a layering thing to kind of have the dress appear as it would if it was on an actual person. That must have been really cool for you as a conservation assistant to kind of take a deep dive into how these dresses are made and how to present them in a way that will really stand out for people.
And you also get to know people's bodies pretty intimately, that we sort of know the shape of Jacqueline Kennedy now because of displaying and mounting her dress.
Sure. Now you have a lot of tools that you use, and there's a display case of that. Can you walk me through? I mean, I don't know. It looks like a torture device here. There's a bunch of like sharp things and a drill. I'm like, what?
So we use a knife to form the ethafoam to the exact shapes that we need, and then we have a scraper that sort of helps us to sand down the surface so it's not as rough. And then on top of that, we have a hemp material, a hemp cotton cover that smooths out some imperfections, and then a show cover on top of that. And these are cotton archival materials that won't affect the gown itself.
What's the bungee cord for?
The bungee cord is to hold the mannequin slices together when we're gluing them together.
Oh, so it's kind of like, it's like construction.
It is, it's a little bit.
Absolutely. And you give people, as part of this exhibit, you give people a hands-on kind of example of what these things feel like. Typically when you go to museums, don't touch anything, take it from me, I know. But they can touch these things and kind of get a feel for it, right?
Textiles are very tactile. You have to feel them. We don't use gloves because you have to be able to feel the materials to sew them. We use clean hands instead. We're always washing our hands to get rid of any oils or dirt on them. But we want people to be able to experience those materials and know what they feel like.
Yeah, so how long typically does it take to dress a mannequin with one of these designs? I mean, are there the more complicated dresses and easier dresses?
It really depends on the dress. It depends on the body, but it usually takes about a week, about 40 hours to go from form to finished product.
Now, I know this whole exhibit kicks off on September 9th, but I mean, are you guys going to be racing to the finish line? I mean, just talk to me about, you know, the stuff that happens, you know, behind the scenes when you're getting ready for a show and, oh no, something happened.
Well, there's always the final finishing touches. That one of the things is the neck treatments, that we have neck caps that we upholster and put on them, and that's sort of the final touch. We also do some humidification, some steaming to ease out any wrinkles that are in there, and some padding. Sometimes on pieces that have a lot of weight, if it's a bow, we'll use magnets to hold up the bow, but they're covered, so you don't even know that they're there.
You just must really love your job.
It's a lot of fun. It's a great place to work.
I know. That's why we keep coming. Heather, thank you so much for sharing this behind the scenes treat for us. And we'll be right back. Hey there, are you enjoying the behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to put on the Ann Lowe exhibit? If you happen to come and check it out, make sure you snap a photo and share it with us on Facebook. Now, here are some other things you might want to check out. For more information on any of the exhibits here at Winterthur, visit winterthur.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of The 302. Make sure you follow us on Facebook for plenty of behind-the-scenes information, photos, and videos. We're going to leave you now with some beauty shots here at Winterthur. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on The 302.